Hi, it's Alex at Ithaca Cybersecurity. On this week's edition of Profit Insights, we have establishing a compelling vision, logotherapy, and the 5 whys. To provide access to the world's information in one click, Google. To be the Earth's most customer-centric company, where customers can find and discover anything they might want to buy online, Amazon. Increasing investor value by reducing cybersecurity risk, Ithaca Cybersecurity. So there, out of those three, of course, there's one of the greatest vision statements ever created, and then 2 pretenders. But why do we bother? Why do great companies invest time and energy in vision statements? Isn't it just a bunch of hyperbolic fluff? Something that's pasted into glossy marketing materials, a front just for organizations' real underlying mission, which is, of course, maximizing short-term shareholder returns. Well, maybe not. So when we look at the 20th century psychotherapist, Viktor E. Frankl, and his work, it might be able to bring us some insight with his theory of logotherapy. Frankl's thesis expands on the work of his philosophical antecedent, Friedrich Nietzsche, who succinctly outlines their collective outlook. Those that have a why to live can bear with almost any how. Logotherapy teaches that a meaningful life is the foundation of psychological well-being, not happiness and not success. Frankl's theory carries extraordinary credibility through his lived experiences. As an Austrian Jew who lived from 1905 to 1997, Frankl was persecuted by the Nazis in the 1940s and survived both the Auschwitz and Dachau concentration camps. In his awe-inspiring work, now this is an absolute must-read or listen if you haven't done so already, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl reveals his death-defying mindsets. Even in Auschwitz, he would concentrate on his life and meaning beyond the camp. He dreamed of teaching in a lecture theatre, publishing his reconstructed manuscript, which was taken off of him when he went into Auschwitz. That manuscript is what we're talking about today on logotherapy, and being reunited with his then pregnant wife. Frankl also managed to find meaning through simply enduring his unrelenting hardship with dignity. And although he has a really stark example in his own life, he cautions us against suffering for its own sake. In his view, suffering with a benevolent attitude should only provide meaning if it's absolutely unavoidable. Logotherapy also acknowledges that human meaning is fluid, so changing as our circumstances evolve, both across the short and longer time frame. So, for example, and this is a personal example, today my purpose might be to support my family. Tomorrow, to help a client. For the next decade, my meaning centers on providing and being present with my family. When I've finished that, when my kids have grown up, maybe I can then discover a new meaning. Do you ever find yourself more irritable or susceptible to low mood during the weekends? I definitely do. And I think it's the lack, and Frankl agrees, well, I've stolen Frankl's idea. Frankl would suggest that the lack of structure, the inward focus, the absence of specific objectives, may be the underlying cause of what Frankl calls Sunday neurosis. Of course, as with much of Western culture and thinking, Frankl's work traces back to the Romans. So logotherapy emphasizes the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And this freedom in choosing our thoughts, what Stoic philosophers will call the reasoning faculty, underpins much of the Stoic school of philosophy developed over 1900 years before Frankl's lifetime. The man who does something under orders is not happy. He is unhappy who does something against his will. Let us therefore so set our minds in order that we may desire whatever is demanded of us by our circumstances. So that's a quote from the Stoic philosopher Seneca in his 124 letters to Lucilius, and I believe that is letter number 61. The idea of being engrossed in meaningful work is, of course, one I agree with, and it follows then that organizations that unify behind a meaningful vision or mission statement will have a more cohesive and highly motivated workforce, and we could infer greater profits or productivity. The most practical approach I found to establishing a vision statement came out of Stanford University in the early 1990s, and it's called the 5 Whys method. And it's described by its inventors, Jim Collins and Bill Lazier. Their method asserts that every organization has a purpose, whether that is stated or not. But it's only when this purpose is clarified that it can act as a test for all decisions by asking, is this action consistent with our purpose? Establishing a clear vision statement also has another huge benefit. It helps us say no a lot more. And it leverages, by doing so, the power of the 80-20 principle, which I have banged on about so much in this Profit Insight series, and is discussed in other recordings and commentaries and YouTubes, wherever you're getting this. So freeing up time for the important stuff is what establishing a clear vision statement is all about from an organizational perspective. Organizations with a defined vision are less likely to get distracted with unprofitable blunders such as strategic inverted commas acquisitions that lack synergy or attractive opportunities from customers really outside of their target market. So it stops the hubris, it stops the overconfidence. We always go back and we ask, is this action consistent with our purpose? Here's how the 5 Whys method worked for me in a recent, not so recent venture, actually, in one of my earliest entrepreneurial ventures, Penpal Consulting. What exactly is our purpose? Question. Answer. We provide and manage contractors for the NHS. Question. Why? Well, to help them with their digital transformation. Question. Why do they do that? Answer, well, first we Google the NHS vision statements. Well, so they can provide safer and more efficient patient care. Question, why is that important? Answer, we help our clients deliver safer, more efficient patient care through quality, long-lasting relationships. Creating a vision statement and consistently using it as a test for all decision-making is a critical step. It will motivate you and your colleagues to help you reject 90% of the opportunities that come your way, so you or your organization can be a world-class performer in the remaining 10% that you can do better than everyone else. Having a clear why isn't just a philosophical luxury, it is competitive advantage. As Frankl discovered in humanity's darkest hour, meaning provides the strength to endure any challenge and the clarity to choose the right path forward.